If you've played any of the mainline Fallout games, you've likely at some point in your travels stumbled upon this absolute stud, otherwise known as the Mysterious Stranger. And just as the name would imply, he truly is quite elusive. In the first and second Fallout games, the isometric ones from Black Isle Studios and Interplay, the Stranger will appear periodically in your travels as either a man or a woman, usually in dire times of need helping you to vanquish enemies. But if you try to talk to this individual afterwards, they will always ignore you or simply state that they are there to protect you and will not continue to talk. In Fallout 3 in New Vegas, we can once again find this mysterious stranger, but this time in all their 3D glory and also sporting a special Magnum pistol, which when holstered and unholstered plays a little Western jingle, probably a nod to the detective noir and Western vibes that the character gives off. And finally, in Fallout 4 and 76, we once again will stumble upon the mysterious stranger frequently, willing to help us out either when we're going into battle or watching from afar during our most important moments. However, most peculiar of all, despite seeing this trenchcoat-loving maniac throughout multiple games that take place over hundreds of years, we are no closer to figuring out the real identity of this cryptid. What we do have, though, is a lot of odd evidence. First of all, in Fallout New Vegas, we are able to meet a man named the Lonesome Drifter, who, if we inquire about more, will tell us that he was abandoned by his dad at a young age and forced to figure out how to survive with his mother. It's something that you would expect to be commonplace in the dystopian world of Fallout, and thus isn't very notable at all at first. But where things get extremely interesting is if we actually look at the pistol the Lonesome Drifter is holding. None other than the mysterious stranger's prized Magnum, sporting the same exact Western rift from before. Trying to get more information about this out of the Lonesome Drifter doesn't lead us very far, but it still does give us a big hint that the mysterious stranger is likely this man's father, and he for some reason abandoned his family to presumably watch over you. But the man's secret identity doesn't stop there, because if we take a look at the Fallout official game guide, things get a lot more crazy. In the pages on this helpful companion in game, we are told that the mysterious stranger is an angel-like figure of sorts, who stalks the player and assures their survival, and even more horrifyingly, is also listed not as a man, but an unknown being. But how could that be the case? After all, isn't the mysterious stranger the father of the Lonesome Drifter, who is a real human being? Well, in Fallout 4, if we investigate some of Nick Valentine's secret stash of intel, we can come across one page he has gathered on the mysterious stranger, where he notes how he is always one step ahead and lurking in the shadows, and here Nick makes the impressive guess that the mysterious stranger may actually be the mysterious strangers, multiple men and women that are part of a shadowy organization. And yet, even with all this, we still have no idea who this man, woman, or thing really is. Multiple theories in the community have sprung up, ranging from Vault-Tec scientists from the future using time travel to ensure we survive to enable some big event, secret Enclave members that have a vested interest in the player character, all the way to the mysterious stranger being Santa Claus, who had to figure out something else to do after he no longer could deliver presents around the world for Christmas. And yes, this theory has some compelling evidence to back it up. On top of this too though, we know that there are other similar characters in Fallout lore like Misfortune and the Mysterious Savior, who also will randomly appear out of nowhere and assist the player character in each game, whether that be the Vault Dweller, Chosen One, Lone Wanderer, Courier, or Sole Survivor. And it implies that there might be an entire organization of sorts, working in the shadows, watching everything we do, pulling the strings behind the scenes without us knowing. Or in other words, yet another ancient society causing havoc in the world. But maybe the most likely theory based on all the evidence we have before us is that the mysterious stranger is, as his name implies, something we can never fully understand. Potentially the figure could be an eldritch being of sorts that for some reason has taken an interest in us as a player, and maybe even is trying to break the fourth wall in order to communicate with us in the real world somehow. Potentially, it might even be Ukultoth. But honestly, Bethesda probably won't ever give us a definitive answer, and I think that's for the better. After all, the fear of the unknown, or mysteries that keep us on the edge of our seat, well that's what makes games and their deep lore so interesting in the first place. And sometimes never getting answers is so much more satisfying than getting everything explained to you, as weird as that sounds.
Sounds. 'Cause 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 'cause
As mentioned earlier on this list, all the cryptids from Fallout 76 stem from real-life folk tales and rumors, and our next mystery, the Jersey Devil, is no different. Based on the story of Jane Leeds, a woman from Pine Barrens, New Jersey, it was said that while pregnant with her 13th child, she cursed her husband and family for the horrific life they were putting her through, constantly pumping out one baby after another, and vowed that her next child would be what she called the devil. From here, the tale goes that from her stomach bursted a dragon-like abomination, composed of red eyes and scales, which took off and flew into the night, dedicating its life to killing and torture. For years, it stalked the backwoods of the Appalachia while hunting small school children and adults, dragging their bodies deep into the woods, never to be seen again, while people in town lived in constant fear of a creature some said didn't even exist. In Fallout, this tale goes exactly the same, but we get an even closer look at the animal and its backstory as well, along with a boss fight where we actually go up against the beast in the questline Sins of the Father. The actual monster itself is best described as a cross between a dragon and salamander, sporting a large fin structure on its back supported by an extra long tail with a razor-sharp blade at the end. Its eyes glow bright red with fury due to the blood in its veins, which passes on to its offspring, known as lesser devils. In fact, in Fallout 76, when talking with Antonio Russo, a former mobster, he also informs us that the blood of these monsters is also an extremely potent and addictive narcotic that is being used in the Devil's Blood drink, meaning this cryptid specifically may have caused some of the most damage of any on this list, due to the amount of rage-induced alcohol binges it has been a part of in West Virginia in the Fallout universe. Next up, in what might come as a surprise for most of you, Deathclaws, one of the most fearsome but also well-known enemies in the entire Fallout series, wasn't always a sure thing. You see, back during the height of the Great War with China, top US scientists began work to create a new super soldier that could serve as a cost-effective replacement for human troops in heavy-duty combat scenarios. This genetic testing eventually resulted in a mishmash of various animal species, primarily Jackson chameleons, being combined into one bipedal monstrosity we know today as Deathclaws. These hulking brutes sport razor-sharp talons on their feet and clawed grips made up of 5 fingers and 1 disposable thumb each, along with massive pointed horns that grow out of their head, transforming them into unstoppable killing machines. A single swipe of their claw is capable of bisecting even lightly armored human beings in mere seconds. And in order to kill one, you will be expending multiple clips of heavy firearms into the beast or calling on ordnance for backup. Luckily for us though, Deathclaws are known to be wary of loud noises and bright lights like flares, meaning they can actually be quite skittish and easy to scare away if you know what you are doing. Sadly though, if you don't, Deathclaws love to travel in packs and are very territorial, with the mothers and alpha males constantly guarding any laid eggs with their lives if need be. However, before the beast could be fully utilized in the wartime efforts as intended, allowing more troops' lives to be saved, the bombs dropped, and the entire world fell into chaos. During this post-war Armageddon, many of the Deathclaws managed to escape from confinement into the wild, where for years they hid away in their nests far away from civilization, while they multiplied in numbers rapidly. For many years in the post-war era, most citizens in the wastelands of California especially told tales of large reptilian creatures that stood 9 to 10 feet tall, but for decades these were seen as only rumor and speculation. In New California, for instance, up until 2161, if you were to ask most people in the region about Deathclaws, they would quickly assume you are a crackpot and conspiracy theorist. That is, until the remains of Los Angeles, known as the Boneyard, became a hotbed for Deathclaw activity, including an especially aggressive mother and her offspring, after which on the West Coast at least, the tale was spread everywhere. In other areas like New Vegas and the Appalachian region of West Virginia, Deathclaws were much more abundant much earlier. And because Deathclaw lore in Fallout in general is pretty loose between each game, it's hard to tell exactly when each part of the United States accepted the fact that Deathclaws were in fact a real thing. What we do know at least is that for many parts of post-war America, New California especially, for decades these creatures were seen as nothing but myth and speculation, despite how prominent they are in Fallout media and games today. In Fallout 2, in fact, we can even find an intelligent Deathclaw who has been experimented on by the FEV virus, which resulted in him leading a new pact of pacifist deathclaws which try to avoid human contact. And it goes to show that even some of the most well-known monsters in Fallout lore were at some point cryptids in their own right, that inspired fear and terror in the hearts of those across the wasteland who are now forced to survive in a world unlike anything we've seen before. Out of every single cryptid in Fallout history, if I had to pick a single one I thought was my least favorite, I would probably have to go with the Beast of Beckley. And that's because for all intents and purposes, this cryptid is really nothing more than a wolf with a den of pups that she guards. In the lore of Fallout 76, we know that there were sightings of old Beckley even before the Great War broke out, implying that for potentially even thousands of years, this elusive albino wolf with razor-sharp claws and fangs has been in hiding. But considering the quest we find her in-game shows that she has babies, could it be that there is an entire lineage of these albino wolves that are being mistaken as cryptids, rather than just one supernatural dog who has haunted the Appalachia for hundreds of years? It's hard to say, since we never get much information on the monster outside of one boss fight where she is fairly easy to take down. And even online, looking for any actual real-life parallel for the Beast of Beckley can prove difficult, with the only reports being from West Virginia in the 20th century talking about a mysterious dark wolf with 4 eyes which would stalk people in the woods at night. Either way, this is just one of those cryptids that doesn't really have all that much intrigue in my opinion, and serves more as a cool animal to add as a boss fight than anything more mysterious or impactful to the lore at large. In a way though, that's what I do like about the Beast of Beckley as well. It shows that not all cryptids in Fallout are actually a thing, and sometimes there really can be hoaxes or tricks by different people. That doesn't mean that one day though, the Beast of Beckley couldn't prove us all wrong and show us there is a lot more than meets the eye. Or in this case, eyes. When it comes to cryptids in Fallout, usually the larger something is, the more dangerous. But in the case of mega sloths found in the mire and cranberry bog of Fallout 76's Appalachia, this assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Standing on average well above 8 feet tall, these gargantuan mammals sport a rough overcoat of fur along with 3 sharp talons they use to shred adversaries apart while they stand on their 2 hind legs in place. But if you do ever happen to stumble upon one while out in the wild, don't fear, as these cryptids are better known for their docile nature and lovable smiles than anything mean, only turning hostile if aggressed on first, after which they will shake their bodies violently to release toxic spores from the mushrooms that grow on the fur of their back. But you still may be wondering, if we can find these massive sloths in game all over today, then what exactly makes them cryptids, and how did they even appear in the first place? Well, sometime before the Great War broke out, Isaac Garahan, son of Vivian Garahan, the CEO of Garahan Mining Company, grew an odd fascination with sloths. Begging his family to let him keep some as pets, he eventually got his way, building an entire enclosure for the furry friends at the family estate, full of feeding troughs, jungle gyms, and tanning booths. However, despite how slow and lethargic sloths are known to be, Isaac's new pets managed to escape from their confinement multiple times, after which they would sneak into his brother's room and scare him at night. These mishaps continued on until Isaac's brother hit his breaking point and promised to kill the sloths if he ever saw them again, forcing Isaac to build better barriers for his only friends. As to what exactly happened to Isaac and his family's fortune after the war, it's hard to say. But what we do know is that if we visit the estate in-game nowadays, we find signs that the sloths managed to escape yet again after the bombs fell. And these humble beginnings are likely what led to the mega sloths of today. Because you see, due to the large amounts of radiation flowing through the mountain ranges of the Appalachia for many years, the original sloths slowly mutated and formed into the hulking behemoths we know now. But even in this transformation, they managed to keep their more whimsical and silly demeanor, whereas many other irradiated animals became more violent and sadistic. And for those of you who don't know as well, mega sloths are actually a thing in our real lives, commonly referred to as megatherium or giant ground sloths. These creatures were first recorded as appearing near the beginning of the Pliocene era 5 million years ago, and would have roamed the plains of South America for millions more past that. Even Thomas Jefferson in the late 18th century debated the existence of the rumored cryptids, and it was only recently that real fossil remains were found frozen in ice. In fact, scientists now think that the existence of avocados is in big part due to the giant ground sloths of old who spread the original seeds across Mesoamerica and the rest of the supercontinent. Or in other words, you owe your avocado toast to giant ground sloths from 5 million years ago. So just like in our real lives, the myth of the mega sloths in Fallout 2 has been proven true, where many years after the bombs fell, newly formed tribes told stories and rumors of giant sloths that were thought to be nothing but superstition and hearsay. Based on the Monongahela River monster cryptid of West Virginia, the Agua from Fallout 76 is a 20-foot-long snapping turtle brute with a large horned carapace on its back, along with giant fingered hooves for feet and razor-sharp claws on its arms. This supplies the monstrous cryptid with an enormous health pool and defense, and means encountering one in-game can prove quite the battle. But as to its true origins and lore, we still don't know the real truth. The Monongahela River monster was technically first sighted back in 1746, when it was reported that a 12-year-old boy was dragged into the Monongahela River by a massive sea turtle. Other reports since that have described the creature as having 2 heads, a serpentine tail, and most of all, a knack for dragging things underwater. But in Fallout, the Agua isn't quite as mythical, and serves mostly as a land-dwelling creature that simply strikes fear into its opponents. What we do know is that for some reason, the cult of the Mothman in-game has targeted the Agua in multiple attempts to capture and sacrifice it to the Mothman, believing the Agua's ancient blood holds a divine secret and ability to see into the past. Could this mean that the Agua is hiding a lot more than meets the eye? After all, the ability to see into the past or having magical blood sounds like the properties of a Cthulhian entity like, say, Ugletoth, more so than just a run-of-the-mill mysterious animal. And if the cult is trying to get to this creature to sacrifice to the Mothman, maybe the Agua is in fact a representation of divine evil, which, as we mentioned in the Mothman section, could be exactly what the wise Mothman is looking to stop. Potentially, there's even a much deeper mystery at play with these cryptids specifically, that could point to a grand conspiracy spanning across all the Fallout games, which could shed light on the ancient world of Fallout and how it all came to be. Introduced in the Once in a Blue Moon update to Fallout 76, the Blue Devil is yet another Fallout cryptid based on real-life Virginian folklore. As the tale goes in our real world, this large bluish dog creature, slightly bigger than a buff pony, would hunt down livestock for farmers and prowl around at night, constantly emitting a ghastly howl. Very similar to, say, a werewolf, one of the most popular cryptids in history, and in the case of the Blue Devil, we too can find them in Fallout lore. In 76 specifically, Blue Devils are mentioned as being seen even before the bombs dropped, where we can uncover during an investigation with a Blue Ridge Caravan Company member Clyde in-game that apparently Blue Devils were used in top-secret races and war efforts against China. Could this mean that at some point on battlefields in other countries were massive dog creatures standing on 2 legs swiping at commies with massive claws? Maybe, but we still have no first-hand evidence this actually happened. But I'm sure Rip Daring would be proud. What we do know is that apparently at some point, a Blue Devil with a quote-unquote white spot on it was somehow involved in a nearby secret place that was never specified. But my guess is that maybe the Blue Devil, similar to the FEV cryptids or the Enclave experiments, could have come from an Appalachian lab, which even long before the war was experimenting with making human-wolf hybrids that could turn the tide in wartime efforts. Regardless though, even the Blue Devils that we do find in-game now are quite fearsome, sporting a howl attack which can inflict uncontrollable fear across enemies to run away, along with extremely high built-in damage reduction and armor. Luckily for us though, most Blue Devil offspring have trouble surviving their early childhood, probably due to some genetic defect that has not been studied. So only a select few live on to become the fearsome beast civilians all across the Appalachia have spoken of even before the bombs dropped. And for me, I love cryptid stories like these, ones where we don't know all the answers, where the entire origin stories of some of the craziest monsters in game are still shrouded in mystery, allowing our imaginations to take form and go wild with speculation. After all, isn't that what makes cryptids and mysteries in games like Fallout so awesome in the first place? I know it does for me at least. You might think that in a universe full of giant mutated animals, eldritch gods, and evil scientists experimenting on helpless individuals, that the myth of ghosts would have long died out. But Fallout shows us, just like the real world, these cryptids are alive and well, with many sightings and stories to tell. However, while there are lots of side stories or small one-off terminal entries that imply or mention ghosts, there are two main notable times we actually encounter some of these mythical aberrations in-game. The first comes from Fallout 2, where we can stumble upon Anna Winslow. Born inside the Den, a drug and slave trafficking hotbed in Northern California, Anna and her family lived a relatively tough life, until they sadly passed away in the depths of this horrific dungeon. For Anna, though, she was unable to pass on, as a local chem dealer known as Joey had stolen a locket from her house, and thus her spirit was unable to go into the afterlife. If you thought the tale of Anna was sad though, then just wait until you hear about Lucy Grantchester. Found in the Fallout 4 DLC add-on Nuka World, Lucy was the daughter of Morticia and Hannibal Grantchester, rich estate owners whose home was used as part of the Nuka World theme park long after their passing. Many years before, though, when it was owned by the family, it was said that Lucy as a young girl became possessed by some sort of spirit, after which she butchered her family in cold daylight, smiling as the blood splattered against her face. Due to this heinous act, Lucy was committed to a mental asylum, where she terrified anyone she came into contact with, eventually leading to her escape around her 18th birthday. After escaping though, Lucy made her way back to the family estate and tragically hung herself gruesomely in the attic, forever transforming herself into a ghost that haunts the halls. It's a harrowing story for sure, and shows us once again that oftentimes the most sad stories in Fallout come from everyday human beings and their actions rather than crazy cryptids and critters. For all of the faults Fallout 76 has, especially on its initial launch, one thing that the game has always done exceptionally well is creature design. And our next cryptid is one of the best examples of this. A beast fearsome in both stature and demeanor, who has led to the deaths of countless cryptid hunters and civilians alike, all while for years being thought of as nothing but a hoax: the sheep squatch. Half Sasquatch and half sheep, these massive beasts sport large ram-like horns on their head, accompanied by a face that looks like a skull picked clean of skin. In combat, the sheep squatch glows red as it heals from any damage it takes, and will charge and roar at everything that stands in its path. On its feet are two hooves, and for hands it has large lobster-like claws with razor-sharp skeletons that can kill almost anything in one swipe. For this reason, it's highly advised that if you do fight one in-game, you come very prepared, ideally with power armor or mini nukes just in case. But the question still remains: what is the lore behind this cryptid? Well, before the Great War, at the local Vault-Tec University in West Virginia, a group of friends and cryptid hunters became obsessed with the idea that this monster may actually exist outside of some local rumors, and they dedicated themselves to finding out, forming a group known as the Truth Seekers, who went on to hunt down local cryptids and rumors. The group initially consisted of Ray Gary, Calvin Van Lowe, and Scott Scoot Conroy, a band of 3 men who were convinced that these local cryptids were in fact real, most especially the sheep squatch. They worked endless hours looking for the beast, and even developed things like the imposter sheep squatch modified Assaultron, which was a robot with a sheep's head meant to lure out the animal. The imposter sheep squatch actually almost killed Calvin at one point as well, after he mistakenly overwrote some of the programming trying to turn on a mating ritual. On top of this as well, the actual Truth Seekers organization is shrouded in mystery, with many hints pointing to the idea that the original founders were actually looking to trick unstable geniuses like Calvin to help gain power and influence under the guise of cryptid hunting. Eventually though, despite the fact that we don't know the full intentions of the Truth Seekers, before the war broke out in 2077, they were able to get their biggest wish, and most members of the organization would come into contact with the sheep squatch at some point, resulting in life-threatening injuries, trauma, and even more questions about the nature of the monster. For example, where did this cryptid even come from? We know that it must have existed even before the bombs fell, meaning it wouldn't have been a result of the worldwide increase in radiation. However, that doesn't remove the possibility that there could have been some enclave or vault-tec testing nearby using FEV or radiation to produce something as insane as the sheep squatch. After all, we know there were similar things going on in Appalachia at the time. Maybe most intriguing of all, though, is the fact that if you do manage to kill a sheep squatch in game, on their ears can be found serial numbers, implying that the sheep squatch may in fact be local experiments from farmer research firms like Arctos Pharma. Then again, however, normal sheep on farms are also often given serial numbers on their ears to identify them, meaning this monster could be the result of sheep exposed to heinous chemicals or viruses as well. Regardless, the fact that so much of the sheep squatch lore and history is still unknown is a big part of what makes the cryptid so exciting, especially when we take into account there were sightings of the animal many years before the Great War even broke out. Without a doubt, the Appalachian region of Fallout has a lot of crazy things going on that we've only scratched the surface of. If it hasn't become clear enough by now, Fallout is a universe filled to the brim with strange and wacky cryptids. But out of all of them, maybe none give us quite as an unsettling feeling as the Smiling Man. Found yet again in Fallout 76, the Smiling Man, or Ingrid Cold as he calls himself, can be found randomly in the world simply staring at the player with the creepiest smile you have ever seen stuck on his face. He is adorned in fancy Victorian-style clothing, and if you speak with him, he also says things like, "I hope I have found you well," which implies that he is in fact from a Victorian or Victorian-adjacent era between, let's say, the mid-1800s and 1910s. But how can that be? After all, by the time we find him in-game in Fallout 76, we are in the 22nd century. Well, the more you dig into this man, the more unsettling he becomes.
Salutations! Do not be afraid. I do hope I have found you well. Of course it is. The pleasure is mine. So nice to see a smiling face. Seeking a seeker who cannot be found. Or perhaps it is I that am lost. I have been away a long time. It appears that much has changed during my absence. I have such sights to see.
As you can see, the Smiling Man presumably knows a lot more than he lets on, and on top of this, speaks in ways that imply he is a very old person or creature. And maybe most concerning of all is his constant mention of the divine, especially the devil. Things like, "Better the devil you know than the devil you don't, at least not yet. Ever dance with the devil under a blue moon?" And of course, "I've heard the moon be blue, and I trust that to be true." This final bit of dialogue from the Smiling Man yet again includes a bit of Old English and shows us that the mysterious figure feels most comfortable in that time period. Potentially this means Ingrid Cold could be a time traveler, or secret agent that is floating through time and space to meet us. But if that's the case, then the question becomes, why? Well, when speaking with the Smiling Man, his main curiosity revolves around cryptids and what we know about them, implying that he probably is up to no good and he knows we are involved with things we shouldn't be. Outside of this too, there are multiple places where we can find terminal entries that strongly suggest Ingrid has been in the Appalachia for some time, along with people we can speak to like Clyde from the Blue Ridge Caravan Company, who mentions a strange man appeared one day at the bar, grinning ear to ear, and simply said nothing while he sat in the corner by the fireplace for hours chuckling to himself. So it seems that we are all a part of some sick joke being played on us by the Smiling Man, an entity with the ability to either time travel or stay alive for hundreds of years, who loves to play with his prey. I've mentioned before how usually my favorite cryptids and mysteries in games stem from things that have gruesome backstories or macabre implications, and in the case of the Wendigo from Fallout, it proves why these types of curiosities are so interesting. Technically seen as a rumor even before the bombs dropped in 2077, Wendigos are described in Fallout as extremely tall and emaciated humanoids with ashen gray hair that flows across their body like a silk robe. They sport hunched frames and sunken faces with endlessly black and voidless eyes that depict no sign of emotion, along with long arms and fingers connected to a twisted torso hunched over at the top. Known for their aggression, Wendigos can take down bears with one swipe of their razor-sharp claws, and can move at extremely alarming speeds when hunting prey, making them worthy opponents even for skilled fighters. On top of this too, they are known to perch on top of trees and screech at their prey, finding joy in the fear they can easily produce. In the world of Fallout though, strangely, we have no actual proof that these creatures actually existed before the Great War broke out and the bombs fell. Even though there are multiple places in the Appalachian region of America that spoke about them constantly, even creating landmarks like Wendigo Cave in West Virginia, no official reports or sightings we know of exist. And this strongly implies that at least in Fallout, something strange is going on with the Wendigo. First of all Wendigos are actually born through one of the most heinous acts imaginable: cannibalism. We know this not only from hundreds of reports and research studies in game, but primarily due to a man named Morris Stevens, also known as the progenitor Wendigo, who is the leader of one of 5 raider groups of the Appalachia who happened to be an entire organization of cannibals. One of their main rules at the time, however, was that they would never eat one of their own. But due to a dwindling supply of food and resources, Morris and his wife assaulted one of the members and ate them while they struggled to survive. This act resulted in Morris being banished from the group he started, after which he headed to Wendigo Cave and transformed into the first officially documented case of the monster. Since then, many cannibals in West Virginia have transformed into the fearsome beast, leading to even more questions than answers. For example, why have we only seen and heard of Wendigos in the Appalachians in Fallout and nowhere else? After all, if the action that causes people to turn into Wendigos is cannibalism, then pretty much the entire world should be ripe with them based on what we've seen over countless quests and terminal entries in every Fallout game. And on top of this, why do Wendigos have power over ghouls? When fighting especially powerful ones in Fallout 76, for instance, they can emit a cry which will summon a horde of irradiated ghouls to attack. And in other cases, we can even sneak up on packs of ghouls in-game accompanied by Wendigos as well. Potentially, radiation in conjunction with human flesh can mold the human genome into that of the Wendigo, but that still doesn't answer why so far they only appear in the regions around Fallout 76. Maybe the secret third ingredient has to do with some of the top secret experiments going on in this subsection of America that we've heard so little about up until the release of Fallout 76. Or maybe it could once again point to an extraplanar deity at work in the region, like so many other cryptids imply as well. And it just goes to show that Fallout really is just one of the coolest series out there from a lore perspective. A universe full of so many dark ideas and themes that give birth to terrifying creatures or fresh takes on existing terrors from before.